The free agency frenzy continues right here on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. One big, happy, tight family here. John Schmeelk, Paul Dottino, Lance Medow. I did not wear my blue polo today, though. I feel like I'm very out of place.
You didn't get the memo.
I did not, and I will blame. I will take all the blame here. I've kind of pushed myself onto the show with these two guys because a lot of stuff has happened. I want to talk about it. I think it's exciting. We want to take your calls at 201-939-4513. All right. We have two signings that are official. Let's hit those first. Then we'll talk about the pending everything else. So the two agreements, and this is agreed to terms. Roy Robertson Harris, the defensive tackle, coming over from the Seahawks. Spent 3.5 years with the Jaguars. 5 years before that with the Bears. Between 2 and 4 sacks in 7 of his 8 seasons. 60% of the snaps were with the Jaguars, where he was a starter. Let's start there, guys. This is another, to me, it's a Nacho-style signing, Lance, where he comes in, he's going to be able to play a good percentage of the snaps. He'll give you a little bit of pass rush. He's good against the run. There is some debate as how big he is online. I asked him directly. He is 6'5", 300 pounds. So he is a big man. He likes to play 3 technique, get upfield, and that's where we are with Roy Robertson Harris.
Yeah, he also has experience playing on the outside and the inside. He was a defensive end and defensive tackle. You mentioned he started his career with the Bears, undrafted, spent his rookie year on the reserve list, and then ever since then, he's been in the thick of things. So we talked about on previous shows, guys, that adding a rotational defensive lineman interior guy was one of the things that the Giants needed to address because you wanted additional complements to Dexter Lawrence. And here's a polished veteran who you're not expecting to come in to play every single snap, but I think he has enough experience. He's played in a variety of different defenses, which I think also bodes well for him. I mean, granted, he was on the defensive side of the ball, but the fact that he was with the Jaguars, he was in the division where Shane Bowen had spent in the AFC South. I'm sure there's some familiarity component from that standpoint, but I look at him as a complementary addition to the defensive line who could help provide a little bit of pressure, but mostly he's going to be a run stopper.
And you can still add a guy in the draft. It's a great draft at that position. They didn't break the bank here, Paul. So, again, I think it's just a veteran backstop at a position where the Giants clearly needed some help, especially against the run.
I'll even go further, John. I don't think I'd be shocked if the Giants drafted 2 defensive tackles
sure,
in the
absolutely.
draft.
For sure, I'm with you.
You know, and quite frankly, as he is more of a 3 technique guy, at least that's what he told you when you talked to him yesterday, I could see one of the guys the Giants draft as being a plugger and a run stuffer, more of a nose tackle type.
Yeah.
Because Dexter Lawrence is not going to play every snap this year, okay? He's going to need some breaks.
Yeah.
And so I could see the Giants still drafting maybe 1 and 1 of the defensive tackle types.
All right, the other signing, again, the Giants have agreed to terms with Darius Slayton, Lance Medow, one of the longest tenured Giants.
We're going formal now. Okay, but go ahead. No, I didn't think you were going to address my full name, but please, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yes.
Sir Lancelot Medow. Darius Slayton, one of the longest tenured Giants, going all the way back to 2019, right? He was a 5th-round pick that year, same year that the Giants, brought in Daniel Jones, and they've been here for a long time together. He's been very consistent. 4 of his 6 years, over 45 catches, over 700 yards. So he's pretty consistent year to year. And he's that speed component that you want to cross the field from a Malik Neighbors so teams can't load up on that side, lest Slayton gets him over the top.
Yeah, I think it's amazing, guys, the fact that all these years with all the movement on offense that Darius has found a way to hang around, right?
He's
and
a survivor.
I don't mean that as a negative.
No.
There's so much turnover in terms of the quarterbacks, in terms of his receiver room, in terms of offensive coordinator, head coach, yet here we are all these years later, and Slayton finds a way to re-sign with the team because, to your point, John, he's proven his value. And that's hard to do in this league, and it's hard to also showcase your consistency when there's so much change around you. And I think that he has made the most of his opportunities. He has provided that vertical threat. It's a must for this team. Whoever the quarterback's going to be, we have talked about this ad nauseum. They have to be more explosive on offense. And I'm talking about through the air. And that's where Darius adds to that component. So hopefully the quarterback that does come in and who ultimately wins the job will be able to build a rapport with him and Darius because he has made plays down the field. I'm not saying he's the number 1 guy. There's room for added talent, but I think he understands his role. He's not an emotional presence in the locker room that's going to overshadow everybody. I think he fits in very nicely, and that's why you see the Giants continue to invest in him.
Now, Paul, you could talk about Slayton. He was also the Giants' Man of the Year, Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee this year, so he's very good in the locker room. But then you have to figure, what does this mean for Jalen Hyatt now, who's had trouble getting on the field, which is now still a very crowded wide receiver?
He might continue to have trouble getting on the field with the way things look right now. You have Neighbors, you have Wan'Dale Robinson, and you have Darius Slayton, who are still all ahead of him on the depth chart. And no matter where you wanted to try to fit Hyatt in, he's behind all those guys. That's just a fact. Now, what I will say about Slayton, and I've often thought that he was going to get wooed by a better deal with a more dynamic passing attack, maybe in better weather or maybe even in a dome.
A better team, maybe even too. That gives him
absolutely.
A chance to win.
Yeah.
At a
Somebody,
high level.
because you said he's been here for 6 years. Yep. And the Giants have not exactly been championship contenders.
And Slayton at the end of last year didn't exactly sound like a guy that was going to be back when you talked to him.
It didn't sound like it.
No.
But I think there were two things that made him attractive to the Giants that really are above and beyond whatever it is he can do on the field. Number one, I truly believe that because the Giants are going to have a brand new quarterback, they love the fact that Slayton is very embedded into Dable's system, and Dable loves him. He and Dable have just gotten along so awesomely in the last 2 years.
Which is odd, because when he first got here, he was trying to hold on to a roster spot.
Since he came out of the depths of the depth chart, he's become one of Dable's favorite players. And so I think because they're going to with a new quarterback, the familiarity and the comfort level that Dable has with knowing that Slayton is here, working with a new quarterback, I think that may have had part of the impetus for the Giants to keep him. The other thing that I think, and I don't want to overvalue it, but Malik Neighbors has gone out of his way numerous times to talk about how much Darius Slayton has meant to him in the wide receiver room. He has been his big brother. He has guided him. He has helped him understand the game. He has helped him understand what it is to mature and be a professional. And, I know folks don't always necessarily put value in that. But if you're a franchise who has put a great deal on a young rookie's shoulders, like the Giants have had to do to Malik Neighbors, you would like him to have a good influence. You would like him to have somebody who can really take him along. And I think that may have been part of it, too.
Well, it's a young room. So I think your point is well taken. Just one other thing, John, that I wanted to add. I also, in top of what Paul just mentioned, the durability factor is also impressive for Slayton, right? I mean, we're talking about he's played 16 games at least each of the last 3 seasons. So, right? I mean, do you take a chance with a younger guy? Sure, but who's to say he's going to stay on the field? I think, to your point, Dable knows not only is he good in terms of a mentorship role, but when we need him, he's available every single week.
And I think his number, and again, we don't report numbers here, but you guys have seen it out there, right in line to where the Joshua Palmer number was kind of reported, and I think those make sense. Those guys are probably around the same caliber.
Similar skill set.
Just remember the 3 words: smart, tough, defendable. He does all of those things.
No question. All right. Now, these guys that we're going to talk from here on out, and I'm going to repeat myself a few times so you don't get kicked off the air and get the show canceled. It is the Giants, according to reports, have agreed to terms with, pending a physical, the following players. Let's start with Paulson Adebo, Lance. Paul and I talked about him yesterday, so they got our spiel on that. Tough physical corner, likes to play press, likes to play man-to-man, gets his hand on the football coming off an injury. Your thoughts on the Adebo addition?
Well, here's a big theme that I want to preface my comments with. And, John, this goes back to the show we had last week. When you asked me free agency targets, I said guys coming off of rookie contracts.
And a lot of the guys we're going to list here are all in that category.
A bunch of them are members of the 2021 draft class.
Bingo.
Okay? So I don't think that's a coincidence. I think the Giants front office said, if we're going to build continuity, we're not just going to drag in veteran free agents, borrow them for a year, and hope for the best. No, we're going to sign guys that are ascending and are young, and there is that upside. So Adebo fits that bill. Now, granted, he's coming off a season where he was limited to just 7 games because of the broken thigh bone, but, I mean, that's still not enough to turn you off from a guy with a lot of starting experience. And here's the other theme. Debo went through multiple coordinators, the transition also from Sean Payton to Dennis Allen, and hung around. You're going to see that with some of these other players, like Jevon Holland particularly.
Now, Dennis Allen did remain, so the defensive system didn't really change.
But the point is, new voices. The reason I bring that up is that when a new coach comes in, there's no guarantee you hold on to your job. Okay, and maybe Holland is the best example of this, John, because he has had multiple coordinators, okay?
And we will hit him next.
Yes. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but I'm tying the dots and connecting everything together here is the fact that I like the fact that he has been involved in a situation where there has been change. He's overcome injury. He's young. There's upside there. And he's a starting caliber corner with experience. And that's what this team needs.
Bingo.
Okay, they need some proven commodities on the back end of the defense. Not guys who you say, well, there's potential, or you want to see how they move from college to the NFL. You have proven NFL film.
You plug them in, you know exactly what you're getting.
And that's what they have in a Paulson Adebo.
Yeah, and remember, we talk about smart, tough, dependable. Went to Stanford. You know he's smart. If you watch him play the game, you know he's tough. So he checks those boxes. All right, so Lance, let's go to Jevon Holland. You mentioned him again. According to reports, the Giants have agreed to terms with pending a physical with Dolphins safety Jevon Holland, who I loved him coming out of Oregon. Ball hawk, gets after the football. Even you look at some of his stats in the National Football League so far, he's done a nice job. Not the interception numbers necessarily, 5 of them in 4 years, but 5 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, 25 pass breakups, 5 sacks. And this is what I'm going to focus on here, Lance, going back to your previous point. Just 25 years old, and he just turned 25 in March. So he just turned 25. Tyler Nubin's going to turn 24 this year. Despite the fact that Nubin's a second-year player, and he's heading into his 5th year, they're 1 year apart in terms of age. Yeah. And they're both, and this is what gets me excited about it, not just the ball production. Holland can do everything. I think he's best as a free safety, but he can play at the line of scrimmage. He can play the slot. Tyler Nubin can do the same thing. These are 2 completely interchangeable pieces that could do multiple things at a high level. When in a Shane Bowen defense that is reliant on starting in a too-high shell and disguising in terms of who's going where, I think having 2 safeties like this, and I go back to the veteran corners that Brandon Beane and Joe Shane had with the Bills back in the day, I think it gives you a lot of flexibility to have some fun on defense.
Well, and what I'll add to that is if you remember, the Bills, I would say the heart and soul of their secondary guys was the safety position. Oh, yeah? I mean, they had Poyer and Micah Hyde for many years.
I couldn't remember the name. Yep.
Who coincidentally went to the Miami Dolphins and has been with Holland. But he has experience at strong safety and free safety, which is what you were bringing to the forefront here. Coincidentally, one of his best highlight reel plays was at MetLife Stadium on Black Friday in 2023. Tim Boyle, 99 yards, took it to the house. So he's got familiarity with the depths of this stadium. Not that that was the end-all, be-all in terms of his signing, but I love his versatility. I've been, like you, John, I've been a huge fan of Jevon Holland. You know, as somebody that's covered the league from a national perspective, can't tell you how many times his name has come up. Whether or not the Dolphins are thriving, he finds a way to be active and make plays. And the point that you were also getting at is, okay, so Adebo, Holland, and Nubin are all within the same age bracket. So even though...
Look at Banks.
Banks, too. The fact that you're now building a secondary and you're not worried about, all right, you got a 31-year-old, Paul, that's going to leave in a year, and you're not so sure about this position. I like the fact that even though they have found these players through different avenues, you at least can keep the group together because the age is within the same vicinity.
Well, you figure for at least 2 to 3 years.
Which is a laundry list of time.
If not more,
for the NFL.
This secondary should grow together. And if there's one thing that we know, communication in the secondary and guys who are comfortable and familiar with each other is very, very important. So, I understand philosophically what the Giants did. I will tell you I was surprised, to be frank.
Well, I had mentioned his name in our show last week, and I think both of us, and I said I'd love to have Jevon Holland, but I think he's going to be too expensive.
Yeah.
And his number per year, based on reports again, came in under what McKinney got last year. And if you'd have asked me at the end of last year, different this year, McKinney had a really good year this year. At the end of last year, I would have thought that Holland was a better player than McKinney was.
He's been much more consistent.
But McKinney was better than Holland was in 2024. So
Holland's been consistent. Yes. McKinney's been up and down. And McKinney also had an injury.
Well,
which,
multiple injuries for
yes,
that matter.
I mean, in fairness, Paul Holland's dealt with some injuries too. He's had
Not
some
as
knee
much
issues.
as-
Not as much, but the point is, I guess why I'm bringing that up is you don't know how front offices evaluate that.
No,
and that may
you
be
don't.
a reason why, financially speaking, he was willing to take a number that perhaps maybe we didn't anticipate because we thought McKinney would reset the safety market.
Yeah, Holland games played, by the way, 16 as a rookie, 17 in his second year, 12 in 2023. That was when he had his best year under Vic Fangio.
And that was when he had 2 knee injuries on each knee.
Who, by the way, he couldn't stand based on his comments after Vic Fangio left, but he had his best year
but
underneath
Could have fooled
him.
you, yeah.
He was a key part of the defense.
And then he played 15 games last year for the Dolphins. So
I think it's interesting, though, because when we looked at the Giants' holes or weak spots, if you will, going in, and I don't know, did you guys feel as much as I did about Jason Pinnock being a adequate safety, a guy who was solid,
he was fine,
who probably would not cost you a lot of money? In my opinion, when I was looking at the Giants' need list, I didn't necessarily think they'd spend big on safety to go for that huge upgrade.
I'll say
I
this,
thought
though.
there were other spots
I
that
think-
the money would be used for.
I think they did need playmakers on defense, though. Guys that can
and
get
that's
their
true.
hands on the football. So
Can make
Paulson
things
and
happen.
Debo was one, and I think they value Holland as a playmaker. I haven't talked to anybody, but I'm assuming they value Holland as a playmaker, someone that can turn the ball over, make plays. Like I said this on our little report that we put up on the Holland thing today, Paul. There are some safeties that do a good job of keeping things in front of them, and they don't allow big plays, and they're safe players. This guy is always around the football, making plays, and I think they value that playmaking part of it, where you want to force takeaways and turnovers on defense, which the
Yes.
Giants didn't do a great job of.
A Holland and a Debo can both turn a possession around with a significant play or a negative play for the other team, and maybe that's just what it is. You know what? We've got to get some more guys because our takeaway ratio was really bad this past
Yeah, it was
season.
not good.
Really bad.
Not good.
Right? So maybe they just decided, hey, you know what? We got a chance to get 2 guys in the secondary who can totally change the complexion of a game by taking away the ball or making that huge forced fumble.
Yep.
Let's go get them.
And when you look at, once again, I like looking back at the history of a defensive coordinator. Shane Bowen in Tennessee, Kevin Byard was a
Yep,
big part,
good
right,
was.
at the safety
He was.
position. So you can maybe understand, all right, his thinking comes from that light, so now he's trying to apply it to the Giants. The other thing that I think is really a big positive for Holland is, and this goes back to what I was alluding to earlier, so Josh Boyer, then you had Vic Fangio, and then last year Anthony Weaver from Baltimore. So this is going to be his 4th different defensive coordinator in as many seasons. But the production has not dropped off immensely as he's gone from DC to DC. So if you're worried about it, and this concerns me at times, boy, that's a lot of change for a guy to digest in a small period of time.
He's a smart guy.
He's proven he can handle that.
And I'll say this, his best year was under Vic Fangio, in my opinion at least. That's the system that's most similar to what Shane Bowen does. A lot of 2 safety high. You adjust out of that, disguise. It's not exactly the same, obviously.
But there's similarities.
But yes, the way they play it. So you hope that can carry over. All right, we got 3 more guys. We'll go through these. Only one more for me?
By the way, I was just
Yeah.
going to say, if this man does not capitalize on the connection to the Holland Tunnel in some capacity, then something's wrong.
Here's the
I mean,
problem.
how
Yes.
appropriate.
People don't like the Holland Tunnel.
Well, but he could turn that, I'm sure, into some type of a financial gain,
Well, the
whether they
Holland
like
Tunnel
it or not.
being somewhere no one wants to go, and no one
And
wants
nobody
to go
wants
there
to
with the
throw
football
or
and
go in the
throw it,
vicinity
yeah.
of Jevon Holland.
So
See, it writes itself.
Stay away,
Yeah.
Holland Tunnel, Jevon Holland.
There you go. So if anybody adopts it, just know it was brought up immediately here on BBKL on March 11th at approximately 12:50 p.m. Eastern.
In other words,
So, I
avoid
want
traffic
dibs.
over the middle.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, that's a good one.
I think it's very fitting.
There was actually
Yeah.
an internal Holland Tunnel debate that I cannot speak to.
Oh, there
about,
was?
but yeah,
Okay, I
so-
was not privy to
No,
that.
I
So
know
I
you
just
were
want to know,
not.
I
Yes.
brought this up
Correct.
without any prior information.
Yes.
Yes.
Correct. But yes, it was funny. All right, so we got 3 more guys here. We'll go through these quicker because they're more minor signings. Chris Board, very quickly. He's going to be 30 years old. He's 29 now. Special teams player, 6'2", 244 linebacker. Which one do you guys want to take Chris Board very quickly?
I'll just say this.
Yes.
2 tenures with the Baltimore Ravens, which tells you something, John.
Yeah.
The fact that a
Personality-wise, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Big-time special teams demon and a hitter at about 6'2", 240. And this year, when they had some injuries and also had to replace a Queen at linebacker, he got some time at inside linebacker too. They actually gave him a little bit of a promotion and allowed him to play some defense. So clearly he made a very good impression on the Ravens coaching
And again,
staff.
just stressing all these players, including Chris Board, according to reports, Giants have agreed to terms pending a physical. Same for James Hudson. Lance comes over also in the 2021 draft class, to your previous point. He's played 1,100 snaps at right tackle, 280 snaps at left tackle. The Browns have had a lot of injuries, whether it's Jack Conklin or Jedrick Wills at those 2 tackle spots. He's had to step in. I believe he was one of the starting tackles when the Giants played the Browns in week 3, if I recall. I don't think both those offensive tackles were healthy that year. So I think he started at one of those spots when the Giants.
Well, they lost everybody pretty much in that game.
They did. So I guarantee he.
I think everybody on the roster played in that game, John.
Accurate.
Yeah.
He's had 17 starts over his career. He is basically your, if not primary swing tackle, one of your swing tackles that'll be on this roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has swing tackle written all over him because even though he does have starting experience, I believe it's 49 appearances, 17 starts.
That's correct.
Throughout his career. Okay, so see, somebody did some homework on this show.
I had 17 starts. I just didn't have the appearances.
No, I'm just happy that I memorized those numbers. I was patting
good.
myself on the back. Thank you for those counting at home and keeping balance. As I try to entertain Paul here on this program,
Can we push him off the set? Can I just shove you
Well, there's
over
barely
and
any room
remove
here
Lance?
as it is,
I know, you probably
considering
wouldn't-
you
I know.
invited yourself on this program,
did.
as we said. So, while the internal drama continues to play
Pearson,
out, to the point at hand.
Pearson, do you want to jump on set too?
The more the merrier.
I can
Let's try to
punch
see
in.
how many Giant staff members we can
You
fit on
could
set here
stand
on the
behind
program.
us.
Yes.
There's room for a fourth.
He could just slowly stand up behind over Paul's
I'll
shoulder.
go get some more people too.
Yes, correct.
But in all seriousness, as I digress, James Hudson, swing tackle, meaning I think he is fit into that role. That's been his profile throughout his career. He understands that he's not necessarily day one going to be the guy that's going to play the bulk of the snaps. And with Andrew Thomas's injury history, and depending on what happens elsewhere on the offensive line, I think there was room for somebody like that. I think, to me, the biggest takeaway, guys, is with him being brought into the fold, and I know we still have a lot of time with respect to free agency and camp, is this perhaps an indication that Evan Neal is most likely going to experiment at guard because it's a numbers game right now?
And there were a couple media reports to that extent, too, and I've mentioned that before. That I wouldn't be surprised if that move gets made. So I'm with you. And Lance, I got to say, I'm very disappointed in you. After your Holland Tunnel reference.
Hudson. Well, okay,
How did we not get a Hudson River reference here out of you?
I wasn't going to make the whole show about the geography of the New York City metropolitan area.
And I think people like the Hudson River much more than they like the Holland Tunnel. Hudson River is beautiful, especially you go further north. It's very nice.
Yes, but I'd rather...
West Point's on the Hudson River.
I'd rather be on pavement and security and stable...
You aren't a boat guy?
No, I can't say I'm a boat. I get easily sick on a boat. There's been bad
know.
experiences.
Oh, really?
Yes.
You get seasick?
Oh, yes. I went fishing once, and the entire trip I was laid out on the boat. There was no
we
fishing
need to take
that
Lance
went on.
fishing. Do you think we could do Big Kickoff live from a boat
on a
somewhere?
rocky boat? Yeah, it's just what we need.
We get the wireless
well,
card?
if you want to know what I ate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we can
Have
arrange that.
Have you been on a cruise ship before?
I have been on a cruise ship, but that's
those
different.
are okay. No, that's why
different.
I asked you.
Yeah. Correct.
The ships
I'm
don't sway
talking
as
about
much.
a smaller facilitation on the
do
water.
Did you start
understand.
popping the Dramamine and stuff like that? Did you do that or no?
No, I did not
You
do
did
that.
not. Well,
Yeah.
next time you got to do
Yeah.
that.
The Holland Tunnel and the Lincoln Tunnel are not on land. They are down under
I'm
the
well
muck.
aware, but
under the muck.
But the
He's
point
on
is,
the land,
I'm
under
not,
the muck.
When you're in a
Under the
vehicle,
muck.
though, you're not rocking back and forth. If you are, you're in trouble.
All right,
Okay,
this is
and you
true.
better get out of the
We have
tunnel.
important
Okay,
things.
or it's a new version of the
I-
Sylvester Stallone movie. Remember when they get caught in the tunnel?
Yes.
You haven't seen that?
Yes, it's
Daylight.
Daylight. Thank you. I was trying to think of the name of
Yeah.
it. Yes.
I enjoyed that movie.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, you weren't taking part in the movie, so
No,
that's why
I was
you
not.
enjoyed it. Yes.
Daylight came out right after, I think, Cliffhanger, right? I think Cliffhanger
It was in that
first.
movie. Yeah,
we had to
after.
run. Yeah.
All right.
It's
Anyway,
a great movie at 3 o'clock in the morning. It really is.
so when Paul's stressing about the
He turns to
Washington
Daylight.
Commanders defensive line
Yeah.
on October 13th on the Wednesday before we play the Commanders, he has Daylight
That's
rocking
his
in the
calming
background.
presence,
Yes, that is
yes.
correct.
Yeah.
Sly Stallone on Daylight. All right. Finally,
Watching the rats go
Yes.
away from the water.
Yes,
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
according to reports, the Giants have agreed to terms with, pending a physical, Chauncey Golston, a power edge out of Iowa, 4 years with the Dallas Cowboys. He kind of broke out last year, Lance, with 5.5 sacks. Again, a 2021 third-round pick, keeping with the theme.
Yeah.
We'll see what this means for Azeez Ojulari, who's still a free agent, but a little bit of a different body type for an edge player. A bigger guy, power player. He can move inside and rush from the defensive tackle spot on third down. So I think a useful rotational player on the defensive front.
Yeah, and they did move him inside recently this past season. So once again, the versatility, just like we were talking about earlier with Robertson Harris. I mean, Golston, I think, may even be the most attractive piece of the 2021 class because I think he's just scratching the surface of his true potential.
He broke out last year.
Without a doubt. As you mentioned, the sack production. Now, part of that was his playing time went up, too.
Yes.
Okay, let's not be naive.
Dallas had injuries. They needed him.
Or did he get better and earn that playing time,
I
too?
think you can read into that both ways. There's no doubt about that. But clearly, I think when you look at the change in defensive coordinator, there may have been a different philosophy where the Cowboys said, hey, let's get him out on the field. But we talk about the defensive and offensive lines, to me, with a similar approach for the Giants. There is never enough talent on this roster because of the injuries that this team has had to go through, and you can't tell me that you're going to rely on the 4 or 5 guys on both fronts. So maybe Golston is not coming in, and you're looking at it, Paul, where he's going to get X amount of opportunities because there's a lot of talent in front of him, but who's to say that some of these other guys play 17 games and there's going to be a time where Golston could truly shine and maybe the production doesn't drop off because he's been in these similar circumstances where in the middle of a season, Cowboys suffered injuries, he was thrust into that, and you're not playing the game of what can he do. You saw it already on film last season.
I want to go back to something John and I talked about a month ago. Maybe?
Sure. I don't know what you're going to say, but sure.
No, you'll remember it. You'll remember it.
Well, I don't remember much anymore. But
The conversation that we had about how much I would shy away from having Thibodeau and Burns with their hands down on the end against the run.
Yes.
Remember that? Mm-hmm. This can allow you to avoid that.
Correct.
Because now you have a 270-pound defensive lineman who can play at that spot. As a real down lineman helping out against the run. And if you wanted to go bare front with a 5-man front package and you want to stand the 2 guys up, you could still have 3 guys down in the front if you wanted to. They didn't have the personnel to do that last year. They now do.
Correct. Well, and remember, Azeez Ojulari, depending on his future, you need a replacement to have that third guy. Yeah. So, I mean, to me, it fits in very nicely just based on pure need.
All right, 201-939-4513. That's our little breakdown of what's happened so far and some of the reports that we've seen. Just a reminder, Giants Huddle Podcast going up today. We're going to have a draft podcast up again. We don't want to record a huddle on free agency and then it's obsolete like 2 minutes after we finish the darn thing. So we'll have a recap of free agency in the Giants Huddle Podcast at the end of the week. Draft season's coming out tomorrow. We do small school prospects. Rick Serratello joined Tony Pauline and I, so that was a fun conversation. So make sure you check those out. Giants.com, Giants Podcast platforms everywhere, Giants app, YouTube channel, all that stuff, and you can find some of our video recaps as well on those channels as well with some of the reported moves and actual moves that the Giants have made. All right, let's lead us off with Bill in Connecticut on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hi, Bill.
Hey, John. How you doing today?
We're great. How are you, man?
I'm great. Hey, want to talk about Joe Schoen. A couple of these moves show that he's picked up some learning from these past couple of seasons. Paul talked about earlier about leadership. Last season the Giants let a lot of leadership walk out the door. And I think by holding Slayton, to a lesser extent Manhurts, I think Joe showed an appreciation for the value in the locker room, which they didn't enough last season. I think that's one thing he learned. By signing Holland, I think Joe moved away from being handcuffed as far as positional value goes and going out and getting a unique talent that could really be critical to the defense.
I agree with you, Bill, for sure on the positional value thing. That's why I was surprised by the Holland signing, because he has always been very big on positional value when we've spoken to him. So I completely, Bill, agree with that. And on the leadership stuff, I didn't really see that with McKinney. He wasn't a captain or anything like that. Saquon, for sure, he was a leader in the locker room. That's no doubt about it. But yeah, Bill, I think especially on the position value thing, I'll call it a pivot, I think, based on what we've seen before. Fair?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a pivot, or the problem when you hire a guy who's never been a GM, he's going to make mistakes.
And he admits to that, by the way, that he has learned some of this stuff as he's gone along. He hasn't shied away from that.
No, and to his credit, he did. and hopefully, he'll be able to do the other thing I was going to say is, this last draft was so good, but the problem is you look at the first two, and they weren't everything that they could have been. So hopefully he'll be able to continue to deliver the draft with the same or close to the same quality that he did last year.
No, Bill, you're right, and you hope. Appreciate the call. We're gonna try to get a lot of guys today if we can. Upward trajectory, right? That's what you're hoping for here. Lance talked about getting guys that are ascending. You hope the draft classes continue to ascend and get better as you go as well. So we'll see how that goes.
John, just as a matter of timing here, the Giants had a rough few years there where they did not get a whole ton of long-term production out of their drafts. These guys are coming from that time frame. Think about it. The 2021 draft, right? 19, 20, 21, these were part of the, let's just say, less than great drafts by the Giants. And now they're signing guys who have gotten some seasoning with other teams, but are coming out of that time frame.
Now, unfortunately, you would hope that you're re-signing your own 2021 draft picks.
Well, but that's not the case. It's too late.
Going out there. No,
this is the second best thing, essentially.
Right.
Finding other rookies that other teams have developed and now bringing them in with a lot more experience.
It's not the favored way to do it, but it certainly can work that way.
Yeah, the Giants' 2021 draft class was not the best.
It did not go well.
No, it did not go well.
Okay, so now you're talking about, what was it, 3 guys now in the last 2 days they signed?
For fans that don't remember, that
who were
was
from 2021?
That was the.
I think it was 4.
Is it 4 guys
right,
now?
Yeah, Hudson, Golston, Adebo, and Holland.
That
Okay,
was that
it's
was
4.
the Kadarius Toney draft
Right.
with Azeez Ojulari.
So think about
Aaron
this.
Robinson.
These guys are not
No boy.
2021 Giants draft
Right.
picks, but these are 4 guys now who came out of that class, and it kind of, if you will, rewrites their stature within the timeline of the roster by adding guys from that year.
We should note, by the way, we're still waiting on the quarterback dominoes. One did drop today. Daniel Jones, according to reports, going to the Colts for a contract that could be worth up to $17 million. So he'll have a chance to they've been very open about this, so I'm not breaking any news. He'll have a chance to compete with Anthony Richardson for that starting spot. He chose that over staying, again, according to reports, staying in Minnesota, where more likely than not he probably would have been a backup to J.J. McCarthy, depending on how that rehabilitation went for him, who they seem to be pretty high on. So
There's opportunity
Daniel
in
Jones
Indy.
there. Right, and now we're really sitting here with 2 quarterback spots open, right? I'll throw the Titans in there too, because I don't really know what they're thinking right now. It's still why they Will Levis, but who else? I don't know.
They could use a veteran, let's put it that way.
Correct. The Steelers that have pretty much nobody, and the Giants that have Tommy DeVito. So those are the 2 spots, and there are a couple veteran quarterbacks still on the free agent market, though I don't think Aaron Rodgers has officially been let go yet. And Paul, the reason they cannot let him go until the start of the league year,
The finances because of the cap?
he's a post-June 1st cut.
Yeah.
So you cannot technically release him until after you get
Yep.
past the 4 p.m. deadline on Wednesday. So that's why that maybe hasn't happened yet. And then,
I mean, he still has permission to talk, but
correct. And
the
then,
bookkeeping aspect
And
is
then you have
different.
Russell Wilson, who obviously is a veteran that was with the Steelers last year, and he is still a free agent. So those are the names and teams that I would keep an eye on. Somebody said they thought Aaron Rodgers might go to the Vikings, which to me, I don't think that made a whole lot of sense. They draft J.J. McCarthy 13th overall, and then they go and they sign Aaron Rodgers.
Well, I mean, listen, they have to protect themselves with McCarthy, given the injury
Then I
he's
would have
coming
just
off
brought
of.
back Sam
So-
Darnold.
Well, but a lot more
I
money.
guess. I mean, how much more?
I mean, Darnold got what?
30,
Based on
like
reported.
33?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying Aaron is just going to take a discount, but I find it hard to believe
He's not going to be that about
that.
I think he's going to be a 20, no? At least?
Well, but,
Justin
like-
Fields got 20.
Sure, but 20-30 is
No,
a big,
no,
John,
it is.
that adds up.
No,
I mean,
you're
listen, I
right.
don't need to tell you that.
No,
So,
you're right. I know.
can understand.
I get it.
And the thought process, too, is not to take anything away from Sam. He had a really good season, but you bring in Aaron, what he can do for J.J. McCarthy, being in the same quarterback room. That's a great
Maybe.
voice.
I just don't feel like they
have.
don't want to push that rookie quarterback timeline. The whole reason they drafted McCarthy was to play with a quarterback on a rookie contract, and then you bring in Rodgers, you're pushing that back into the year.
Well,
I don't know.
Tom Pelissero of NFL Network said earlier today that they plan on starting McCarthy and they just want a veteran backup.
That's why I didn't think Rodgers made a whole lot of sense.
So
I'm with
if
you.
that is indeed correct, Rodgers does not fit that plan.
Well, assuming that his mindset, to your point, is that he doesn't want to come in thinking that he'll be the backup. All I'm saying saying is that if I'm the Vikings, you could plan to have J.J. McCarthy start, and plans change very quickly
it sounds
in
like
the National Football
It sounds
League.
like they did want Daniel Jones back. They just couldn't come to something that was satisfactory. So, yeah, Lance, to your point, I think you're right. All right, let's go to Bash in Ohio. He's up next. Hi, Bash.
Hey, how we doing, fellas? What's going on?
Long time no speak, bro. How are you?
I'm doing good. I was just wanted to touch on the quarterback carousel that y'all was just discussing about, so I wanted to talk on that. It was reports went out today about Joe Milton as far as possible the Patriots possibly trading Joe Milton.
I did not see those reports, Bash. What did it say? I did not see that report.
To a team that developed him as far as that. So I've seen as far as the Giants thoughts on Milton, and then a couple of other young quarterbacks that we can possibly trade if we miss out on the Rodgers or Wilson carousel. We miss out on either one of them, the veterans, as far as some young quarterbacks out there on other teams that are backups that can get starting quarterback potential, as far as Milton, Hayden Hooker, Sam Howell is still out there.
No, Howell is with the Seahawks.
Reader,
so he's not out there.
Quarterback. I wanted to ask about the young quarterbacks being traded, and then compared to the rookie class coming out this year, how would they fall rank with the rookies coming out this year as far as Cam Ward, Shador, Darts, and I'll take that offline as far as a young QB being traded compared to the rookie quarterbacks that they have coming out.
What was the proposed price on the Milton conversation in the New England media?
I'll say maybe a fifth or a sixth rounder.
Is that what it said?
I think they're going to want more than that.
I don't think that's going to be the price.
Any, rounds or anything.
Oh, they did not. Okay, I'm sure they will want more than that.
They just said that they want him to go to a developing team so they can continue his development. So maybe a potential starters.
I would ask you this though.
Thank you, Bash. Appreciate the call.
They've got Drake May, who is their franchise guy right now. I think we all agree.
All right, so
what's so bad about having Milton behind him?
I have the report.
In New England.
I have the report. This
they just signed Josh Dobbs too.
Yeah, Josh Dobbs got signed there. Jordan Schultz, sources. I'm just reading this report, folks, not endorsing it. The Patriots have had discussions on trading quarterback Joe Milton III and would like to trade him to the right situation to continue his development in the NFL should a deal get done. New England loves Milton, but Drake May is their franchise, and they just signed Josh Dobbs to a 2-year, $8 million contract to be the backup. So
that's a very generic report. I mean,
correct.
There's no specifics about what they're looking for. There also have been whispers even weeks prior that I've heard about that. I just want to throw out, and listen, it's all speculation at this point, but keep in mind, the Giants did have an opportunity to draft Joe Milton last year.
Multiple times.
And chose not to. So I wouldn't dismiss that and overlook that regardless of what you think of Joe Milton. The opportunity was there, and they didn't pull the trigger.
And look, I think Charlie has made this point when he's called up before. He's talked about a third-round pick. That, to me, in terms of what they would want, that sounds about right to me.
I'm sure it's not going to be a 5 or 6. That's a
4,
that's a
maybe
lock.
A 4 and something else or something, but it's not going to be. It's not going to be some. Well, I mean, they drafted him in the 6th round, so they're going to want more than that after he had that great game. So,
or else you just keep him. What's the purpose of getting rid of him?
See, that's the thing. What's the incentive in offering him?
Like,
I don't understand.
6th round picks are just crapshoots, right? Get a 3, then you're cooking a little bit there, maybe, especially if you pick the top of the 3rd round or wherever the 3rd round pick happens to be. And I have no idea what. This is just us talking generically. We're not connecting him to the Giants. He's the Patriots' property, obviously. But just speaking generally, I think they're gonna want a nice return for a young quarterback like that.
And generically, if Joe Shane was interested in dangling a pick for anybody, and I'm not talking about this particular player, if he's getting a 4th round compensatory back, he's more than likely going to be more eager to potentially move one of his 2 forts. I don't think he's going to be too eager to move the 1st pick in the 3rd round.
Would you do a 4 and a 5?
I would not.
Okay. I'm just throwing a thing out there.
Okay.
I mean, that's a lot of capital for somebody, once again, that is far from a proven talent.
Played one game.
I don't know.
And does not have a significant college resume either.
Who did the Patriots play in that game that he went off against? Do you remember? Was it the Jets?
Look it up.
Dolphins?
Come on, Mr. Patriot. Let's go.
I don't watch their games.
In all likelihood, was a divisional game. I'll bring it up.
That was my guess. I'm curious.
In 2 seconds.
In the meanwhile,
they played the Bills.
It was the Bills.
The Bills.
Were the Bills playing for anything in that game?
No, Buffalo was already wrapped up.
That's why you got to be careful. All right, let's go to Wilson and Roxbury. Hi, Wilson.
Hey, my three buddies there. Hey, you guys look great together, Johnny. You should do that more often, man. You guys look great. I mean,
This is the buttering up section of the phone call here.
But
No. I'm saying, listen, real quick, before I start, I just want to say I'm so happy for Daniel, man. I think that's the perfect spot for him. He's a much better quarterback to me right now than Anthony Richardson. So I can see him being the day one starter right away. So I am happy for him. If as long as the Colts don't play the Giants, I'm gonna be pulling for him because he's a great kid, one of the toughest guys in the NFL, and like I said, I'm so happy for him. So.
Wilson, that's the best thing you've said in the last 3 years.
he loves Daniel Jones.
I love it. No, I love it.
It's like Daniel.
I love it.
He's a huge Daniel Jones guy. You know that.
I know that, but what I'm saying is we've heard a lot of complaints from Wilson in the last 3 months. But now you've decided to say something really nice.
Well, thank you. Listen, Paulie, real quick. Remember when you told me to put my GM hat on?
Yeah.
You gave me a homework.
I
What
did.
I tell you and Johnny, I'm going to spend 75% on defense, and it's looking that way.
Yes.
I'm gonna get a couple of professional offensive linemen, nothing crazy, but somebody that can be a professional, and it's looking that way. So the only thing we got to do left, Johnny, and Lance and Paul, is we have to sign Aaron Rodgers. And Johnny, you told me last week that if you tell me 8 wins and we are relevant in December, give me a piece of paper, Johnny. I sign it right now, and I'll take every bad thing I said about Brian Dable and Joe Shane.
All right. I like it, Wilson. Put the money where the thank. Appreciate the call, my friend. Put the money where the mouth is. I like that. Good stuff.
Well, listen, you've had a lot more experience over the last
He
few
has
months
laid- he
with
has
respect
laid
to what
the
he has
receipt
said.
down,
So
yes.
I don't have, much to go on that. I can only judge him based on his most recent ones and the ones that I was around for. So, the track record is not as diverse as what the two of you have been exposed to. So I'm not willing to give as much leeway as the two of you are in terms of his feedback and commentary.
Wilson, if you could only give some of those nice pills to Charlie, now we'd really have something.
Charlie was in a good mood last time he called.
He was, actually.
Yeah.
He was.
He was fine.
Yes.
All right, let's go to Ryan in Houston. He's up next. Hi, Ryan.
Hey there, how we doing today?
We're good, man.
I feel pretty lucky with you three considering it's the first time I've tried to call in. So,
Well, thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ryan, I'm
Here's
always
my
happy to hear from new
question.
fans,
Go ahead.
especially ones out of state. What's up?
say again?
I said I'm always happy to hear from new fans, especially guys calling from out of state.
Originally from Connecticut. So here's my question. If you guys think about your personal free agent quarterback lists left
Yes.
and the cheapest options and how many wins those will get you versus the most expensive options and how many wins those will get you. For me personally, I think we still don't make the playoffs regardless of the extreme ends. I still think we are then in a worse draft position. And at minimum, and I did this yesterday before Fields and Darnold were gone, but at minimum you're getting about $10 million this year to spend to fatten up contracts, to maybe entice others. So with your list, do you get there?
It's a good question. Look, the NFL seasons, Ryan, are very unpredictable. We've seen this before. Go back to 2022. All of us were expecting that to be a teardown year where the team was going to be bad. They ended up, winning double-digit games, winning a playoff game. And look, we know it was a bunch of close games, and a lot of it was smoke and mirrors, and we get all that. No argument. And we made that point after. Lance and I had many shows after the year that year, by the way, that you have to be very careful and, making too big of a deal out of a season where turnover ratio was off the charts.
The context.
And all that sort of stuff. So I always hesitate to say what a team can or can't do. But
Okay.
would they be a favorite among NFL analysts to be a playoff team, even if you get whomever you might consider to be the best free agent quarterback? No, they wouldn't be. Would they have a shot? Would the fans be a lot happier showing up to home games where they're much more competitive against a very difficult home schedule, where you hope you're relevant? I mean, God willing, past Thanksgiving, at least past Halloween, which has not been the case over the past few years? I think the answer to yes. And how does that help in the long-term goal of winning a Super Bowl? I don't know. You worry about draft position. It's hard to do that. But look, I think it is important, and again, I've said this before, not just for this GM and coach, which a lot of people want to put it on that only because of what the situation is. The Mara and Tisch families do not want to sit through another one-win home schedule and just suffer through 3 hours of bad football on a Sunday at MetLife Stadium. They don't want to do that. So it's important for them that even if adding this veteran quarterback doesn't make you a Super Bowl contender, if it just makes you better and it makes you competitive and it makes people want to come to the games on Sundays and be a better football team, I get and I used to think this way too before I, really started working here and understanding how the football business worked. You're either going for it to win a Super Bowl or you're going for the top pick. And I think a lot of people think of fanhood in that way, right? Are you going for the Super Bowl or are you going for the top pick? I don't think, unless you're the Philadelphia 76ers, 8 years ago, I don't think, generally speaking, most professional sports teams, Lance, think of it that way.
The Spurs.
And I don't think that's
Well, David Robinson got hurt, so it made it a little bit easier.
Because I got a hot take. The whole reason I'm even going there, I think Shane and Dable sold Mara on 2 years. And the reason being is, how do you go get a young quarterback at 3, whether it's Cam or Shador, Cam's my pick, or a trade back into the first, or even a second round, and say, we will do something worthwhile with this brand new guy.
No, it's a good point.
I'm actually going with, I think the right move is, don't spend the money. I'm good with, Father Flacco, somebody that's just going to be a coach, really, because let's be serious, if we get anybody in the first or the second, they're absolutely playing this season, and they're probably playing pretty quickly.
That's a good, Ryan, you know what?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that was basically it.
Ryan, good call. And I think that's an interesting point. The problem is that you don't know when you're going to be able to get the quarterback. I think if you knew you were going to walk out of this thing with Cam Ward and you believe he's your long-term quarterback of the future, would I be less concerned with spending $25 million on a veteran quarterback? Hell yeah, I'd be less concerned about doing that. The problem is that I don't know what I'm getting in the draft. So it's hard for me to downgrade my targets, for lack of a better term, when you don't know what's coming in the draft in 8 weeks.
Well, I would also apply the same logic, and I'm not here to speculate, but I mean, to the caller's point, even if there was a guarantee of job security, things change over the course of a season.
And
you can't operate like that. I think they have to do what is in their power to field the most competitive and the most diverse roster. And the reason why I'm a proponent of actually investing in a veteran quarterback is, if you do take a quarterback at 3 overall, I think you're then helping the cause of that young quarterback to have a proven veteran with an established track record that has performed at a high enough level to teach the quarterback how to go about his business.
See, my question is, what's a high enough level? I think that's the question that
I'll give you an example.
James was asking. Does Jacoby Brissett qualify for you?
See, Jacoby Brissett, to me, has been a journeyman who I don't think has had a job and proven. Russell Wilson would apply to what I'm selling.
Well, now, obviously a guy like Wilson or Rodgers would. I'm talking, what would a guy like Brissett, would a Jameis Winston, I know he's not available, but just in the abstract, would a Tyrod Taylor, that type of class of quarterback?
I mean, Tyrod's done enough in terms of winning, especially that Buffalo season and everywhere else, where I would be willing to meet you there. I think the other two guys are more journeymen, don't have the track record of consistent production. I mean, listen, Jameis is a flamethrower. There's games where he'll throw 5 touchdowns, right? Monday Night Football against Denver. And then there's other games where there'll be 5 interceptions. Do you want your young quarterback watching that roller coaster?
It reminds me of, it's funny you say flamethrower. Another movie reference. One of the scenes that always got me in Saving Private Ryan, when they call in the flamethrower guy and he takes out the bunker, but sometimes the flamethrower gets hit when it's on the guy's back, and then it just... That's Jameis Winston. Well, sometimes the flames go that way. Sometimes the backpack blows up.
Yeah. So that's why I think you need
that's a visual
more
for you, folks.
Stability, is it ever? And I think that stability is worth paying for. Plus, they are anxious to also evaluate, and here is where I think this gets lost in the conversation.
This is good.
The rest of the talent on the roster.
Yes.
Okay?
And by the way, the coaching staff.
Without a doubt.
Everything.
Well, but the offensive line, too.
Sure.
You want to see, how do those guys operate with a Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers? I'm just throwing out.
That's a great point.
Everyone is talking about the quarterbacks on an island, and I don't go in that direction, as you well know on this program. When you're bringing in a quarterback, you have to think about, and starting to quote Paul again, the spider web here, okay? All the entanglements that come with an NFL roster. You see, I'm learning, okay? I'm being a good boy in terms of you. You're smiling. You're happy, okay? Thank you. Thank you very much. So, I'm here all week, by the way. But anyway, no, I'm not. But the bottom line is, with respect to the starting quarterback, okay, I want to know what guys like Neighbors can do.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay, what Wan'Dale Robinson, what the tight ends. And if you have a quarterback who has X amount of years, you have a better idea of what they're going to bring to the table, not just this year, years moving forward, as opposed to you throw a rookie out there, and it's a dance.
It's almost like adding a really good
unknown.
It's almost like adding a really good point guard in basketball, and he just makes everyone around him better. And you're like, oh well, if this guy's someone that can give the ball where he needs it, he can be a good player. No, I think that's a really good point.
So that's why I stand behind. There, to me, is a big difference between the level of the quarterback that you go after financially.
Paul, you seem to be in deep thought.
Well, the best comparison I could make, and you just brought up the point guard, is when the Knicks traded Rod Strickland for Maurice Cheeks. And then they went into the playoffs and they beat the Boston Celtics at Boston Garden in Game 7 of a playoff series. And it taught that team about what it takes to be a winner and the habits and the professionalism and the kind of stuff that you need in your locker room environment to succeed.
I mean, think about...
And it's a very similar situation.
Here's a perfect example. You mentioned the Spurs before. Why did the Spurs bring in Chris Paul this year? They weren't going to win an NBA title with Chris Paul at the age of 38 or 39.
Correct.
Well, what positive impact could he have on Wembanyama and the other young guys on that roster? So I think that's kind of what you're talking about, right?
And
you're looking for the Chris Paul effect.
Don't forget, the quarterback is the flagship of your locker room.
That too.
And so he needs to set examples. He needs to set standards. He needs to help hold other people accountable as much as the coaches do.
Nah, Lance, I think you made a really good point about the quarterback spot. I think you're right.
And here's another thing, just while we're talking about it, it's all speculation. I mean, Russell Wilson also, who is a rare quarterback that was thrown into the mix immediately, but I like the experience of what he's been around throughout his career. Meaning he knows what it's like to be a young guy to play immediately. He knows what it's like to go to Pittsburgh and deal with an injury and watch competition. The movement in Seattle, the drama.
How about flaming out in Denver and dealing with that?
That's another great
adversity?
example. So, but think about a young quarterback that comes in. Forget X's and O's. Just to listen what it was like navigating that. Again, I would be willing to pay a little bit for that because I think that has value.
Well, see, that was the reason why I was dead set against bringing in this younger veteran. People would throw out Zach Wilson and Trey Lance and say, well, can't you bring in one of those guys and then draft somebody at 3? No. That defeats the whole purpose of what you're talking about. What do you want to bring in one of those guys for?
Would Fields have qualified there? Because he's played a lot, or no?
I don't think Fields brings as much to the table about what he's talking about.
And I happen to agree with you.
Which is why I was never on board with Justin Fields.
No, I think you guys make very compelling points. Let's go to Marcus in North Carolina. Marcus, you're up next.
Hey, guys, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Marcus. What do you got?
All right, sorry, man. It's Marcus in Arizona anyways, but I don't know, man. I just feel like I need to vent because I got no Giants fans friends.
All right, vent away, man. That's why we're here, Marcus. What do you got?
I just feel like the last 10 years have just been the hugest disappointment from in-season to free agency to the draft, and I don't feel that we're ever getting any better. Like, all of everybody's favorite players over the years, from Odell, JPP, Saquon, we just let them leave, and then there's nothing exciting going on ever, and we never get better. So I'm just having trouble finding hope for next season. Like, I want to come back to New York and go to a game again, but I can't find a reason to spend the money to go to New York when, it just doesn't seem that we ever do anything to get better or get anybody excited. So, I mean, you get a cornerback with a broken leg, a 31-year-old defensive tackle, Darius Slayton, good guy. Everybody loves him, but he drops the ball too much. And we gave him the same money that Philly gave Saquon, so that's mind-boggling. And then a safety no one's heard of. And we still only have DeVito on our roster. Not that any quarterback that we could get outside of trading for Joe Burrow or somebody is going to save us. Like, I know there's no one person coming to save us, but can you just give me some hope? I need some hope.
Marcus, good call. And I'll just say, people have heard of Jevon Holland. He's a really good player.
Oh, they have.
I think he was an all. Was he a Pro Bowl or All Pro 2 years ago? It was one or the other. I don't know whichever one. He was definitely a Pro Bowler.
I think he was an almost all pro.
Yeah, he was.
But he was at least in the conversation.
Here's the only thing I would say.
Yeah, he was not. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Paul. He was not a Pro Bowler or an All Pro.
He did not make the Pro Bowl.
No, he has yet to do that.
Ago?
No, he did not. Yeah,
Vinny
that's
DiTrani
surprising.
of the Bergen Record, longtime writer, used to have an almost all-pro team every year, and it was guys who were just a shade under. That's where Jevon Holland
he only
lands,
played
like every
12
year.
games that year. Maybe
He's
that
really
was
good.
why.
That was the knee
12
season,
games.
yeah.
He's a top shelf safety.
All right. Anyway, so what
Well,
were we
the
gonna say
point
about
I was
the
going to make to the player, to the caller, was that, I get it. It's easy to just paint a broad brush and say, okay, there hasn't been anybody exciting here. But Malik Neighbors was very exciting. Dexter Lawrence is very exciting.
And by the way, Dexter Lawrence is who they got for Odell Beckham Jr.
Right.
That draft pick.
He was part of that trade.
Correct.
So, I get it. You're frustrated, so therefore you just make a blanket statement. But I think there are at least a couple of players here, if nothing else. I mean, I enjoy watching Brian Burns. I know he may not be the most dynamic guy to everybody in the league, but the Giants are not just full of, chess pieces here. They do have some guys who, Dexter Lawrence, come on now, when he makes a play,
no, he's fun.
He gets that whole stadium rocking with his big dance, shaking that belly and stuff. Come on.
I'll just say this, and then Lance, you could take it too. Look, guys, you're picking 3rd overall. You have a chance to move the 1st overall if the Titans have tried to move the pick. You have your pick of quarterbacks in this year's draft, or you get a dynamic two-way player in Travis Hunter, or a great potential edge player in Abdul Carter.
Yeah.
That can be a huge help for the franchise. You hope it's the quarterback, if they believe in that player and they think he could be the franchise quarterback. Because, look, you can rotate these other pieces as much as you want, and this goes back to Lance's previous point, until you get good quarterback play, it matters, but it doesn't matter a ton. If you don't have good quarterback play, you're not going to win a lot of games in the league. It's just the way it goes. So, Marcus, they're not there yet. Right now, they don't have that quarterback on the roster yet, other than Tommy DeVito. I'm hoping that when they find that quarterback, especially, and again, not necessarily the 1-year rental for this year, but the quarterback of the future, that's going to be your guy for a long time, hopefully, that's what's going to get you excited. That's what's going to make you book that plane ticket. That's what's going to make you fly back to the Meadowlands to say that, at MetLife Stadium, to say that I got to go see this guy when he was a rookie, and he's the future of my franchise. So that's what I would say. And you might get that guy in the draft this year. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, you look at what Jaden Daniels did for Washington in year 1.
That's exactly what it is.
Listen, not everybody is as successful in being able to implement a plan like that, but results can happen.
Who's had it worse than Commanders fans for 30 years?
Sure.
30 years. And it turned around like that.
They had to lower the capacity of the stadium, John.
Yeah, they covered up on down protect seats.
They did. Yeah. They had no choice because they couldn't sell out the building. They had to just take canvas and wipe out sections of the upper deck. It was really rough down there in Washington for a while.
One player, 1 year, it turns around quick.
Look, another example I'll give you is with what happened with Carson Wentz in Philly and then Jalen Hurts, who I understand wasn't as high, but look, they just won a Super Bowl. So you got 2 examples in the division where quarterbacks have helped change the trajectory of the team.
How about CJ? How bad was Houston before they drafted CJ Stroud?
Sure.
The whole Bill O'Brien mess, trade DeAndre Hopkins, all that stuff.
Yeah. Now, there's still work to be done, and the 3 of us will be the first one to admit that. So I'm not going to say that everything's rainbows and lollipops with respect to the outlook of the team, to the last caller's point. But I will say this. I would shy away from making statements that names have to be the big free agent arrivals in order for a team to improve. I think that's a bit of dangerous, misleading territory because I'll stay within the division again, guys. Philadelphia, and I know they made a splash by getting Saquon Barkley, but their most valuable addition last offseason was Zach Bond, the linebacker, okay, who had an all-pro season and was just re-signed. Now, if we were to have a conversation about Zach Bond and I was to go around to the average football fan, most fans, I would say, probably don't know who Zach Bond is. He was a complimentary piece.
No, I guarantee you fans are not. He's a smaller name than Jevon Holland.
So yes, the reason 100%. I'm bringing that, but look at the impact that Bond had. Now, that doesn't mean that a guy like Holland's going to come in and all of a sudden single-handedly change the outlook of the team. That's not my point. My point is free agency, more often than not, is about good value and good fit, and whether or not you could get a return on that. The teams that sometimes add the complementary pieces get better bang for their buck than the ones that swing for the fences and go for the home run.
I'll even go back to the 2016 Giants. They spent very, very, very big money on Vernon, Harrison, and Jenkins.
Yep.
Now, none of those three players are superstar spectacular that you're going to see on ESPN SportsCenter highlights every weekend.
But they were at the top of the market at their positions.
They were at the top of the market at their positions, but they were not the splash players who were going to make you jump on a plane and come across country to see them play, right? I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah, I agree.
But those guys helped the Giants immediately to become a very solid playoff team. Of course, they got knocked out in Green Bay. I understand that. But they were difference makers to the team without necessarily being SportsCenter highlight players. So to your point, there can be a lot of different circumstances and situations that lead to success. That doesn't automatically translate to I'm buying a plane ticket to jump across the country.
Yep, let's go to Lenin, Columbia, Maryland. And by the way, Marcus, we understand this team has to earn your trust to earn you to pay your money to come across the country. After watching them play at home last year, I wouldn't pay for that either. I get it, but give them the chance to earn your trust again this year and see how it goes. That's all you can do.
We got somebody here now who comes up from the Mid-Atlantic states
he drives
to
up
watch the Giants play every home weekend.
And I know even Len struggled driving up for some of those games he did last year. Len, how are you, bud?
Marcus, speaking for a lot of Giants fans. Thank you, Marcus. Yeah, I tell you.
You're a trooper, Len. You always make it, though. We can count on you.
Yeah, and listen, don't underestimate the value of one home win. I think it turns ownership's thinking toward continuity and away from lack of production.
Well, Len, I would hope that one. I would hope it's, and I don't think it was one
for the
win.
Front office.
Yeah, but
staff.
Len, I don't think John Mara went into his study one night and said, you know what, I had one win against the Colts. That changed my mind. I don't think that was his
I don't
thinking.
think so either.
I don't know. I think it was important. I think it was very important. All right.
Why was it important? Just out of curiosity.
From my point of view, and maybe this will help Marcus too. Not that he really needs any help from me, but I think we're a better team today at noon than we were yesterday. It's a better roster. Not a bad first day. I'm mostly excited about the additions in the defensive backfield. I've been hammering them all off season. I think we made some really, really good choices there yesterday. You guys know I'm a big height weight guy as it relates to position. I like 6'1", 192 at corner. I like 6'1", 205 at safety. I like aggressiveness. They're going to be tone setters. Those two new players are going to be tone setters, and so I think that was. I think those were really good moves. The defensive lineman, John. Did you say 310? Did you say he told you he was 310?
He told me 6'6", 300 pounds is what he told me.
Perfect. What they're going to ask him to do. Really perfect what they're going to ask him to do. I think he's the play. Kind of an unusual thing about him. You don't see a lot of undrafted free agents last 8 years.
Yeah, and by the way, earn a big second contract and a starting job in Jacksonville off his first 5 years with Chicago.
I mean, that's really an accomplishment. You don't see many of those. I think that was a good signing too. Look, we're on our way. Lance, I was going to applaud you and give you compliments on the way you broke it down the other day as to the type of player we should be looking at, and look what happened. They followed. Let me add a couple of things about that. Were they coming off that first contract, going into their fourth, or somebody in their fifth year, even Robinson at 8 or 9? I think teams win when the core of the roster are those 4 to 8 guys.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think that's the core. You're going to have some guys on the other side and some guys who are going to be rookies, but if the core is 4 to 8, I think and ascending players, I think that's a good sign. I know it's easy to criticize yesterday, make jokes about, boy, it looked like the 10th day of free agency, not the first day of free agency. But bigger moves will come. And I like the Dallas guy, another ascending guy. I mean, good size, coming off that edge. Geez, and maybe if you go to a four-man front, he slides in to play defensive tackle. Maybe an upgrade from Chapman. Paul, I think you talked about the defensive backs making plays on the ball. I mean, look at Newman last year. No interceptions in one tip ball. I mean, holy cow! The team. How many interceptions did we have? 2?
Yeah, there wasn't enough. There was not enough ball production. You're right about that.
Oh my God! These guys are not. I mean, they're defensing 12, 14 passes.
Yeah, both of those
even
DBs are drive killers.
Look, the special
they
teams
stop
player,
drives, and that's a big deal.
Say that again, Paul.
Both Holland and Adebo are guys who can stop drives.
They get their hands on the football.
They get their hands on the ball, and they make plays to stop drives. But I had a contact in New Orleans who I messaged after I heard about the agreement with Adebo. And I said to him, okay, your quickest thumbnail, what can you tell me? And he's like, he's tough, he's physical, he just makes good plays, and he helps your defense stall the other team. I'm like, okay, I get it.
All right, Len.
Yeah.
Appreciate the call, my friend.
You go Giants.
I always appreciate.
43 passes defensed in 4 years for Adebo. I mean, do the math.
And how many times did we say
18 2 years ago? Was that the number?
Yeah, he had 18 in 2023, and he had 10
someone
last
else
season.
Memorizes stats around here too, Medow.
There you go. Congratulations. Follow the leader here on this program. He had 10, by the way, in only 7 games last year. So that's also impressive before the injury.
It's a good number.
The number of times we have talked about how this defense could not get off the field.
Yeah.
We could write a song about it.
All right. We need to go eat lunch real quick before we say goodbye. If there's one thing or goal, or not even player target, but goal that you still want the Giants to achieve, besides quarterback.
I mean, you were just hanging fruit out there.
That fruit's getting picked up the tree.
You're going to eat it, yeah.
Yes, I will. At lunch in a second. What's the one goal or target or thing you still want the team to accomplish in free agency before we get into the third and fourth wave where you're just picking guys up off the scrap heap? Lance, why don't you go first?
Well, I'll go back to the conversation, John, that you and I had last week when we were previewing free agency. I think there is still room and perhaps a need for a proven guard on the interior of the offensive line.
Exactly where I am too.
One of the
names,
the
guard market has not really materialized. There's a lot of guards unsigned. Will Fry's
got a big deal from Minnesota. That was a name we brought up.
And he was always going to set the market at the top of the market, right?
But there's still a lot of guys beneath him. Banks got good money.
Yeah, what did he end up
Aaron
getting?
Banks, you're talking about?
Yes. It was over 15.
Was it really? Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah. But remember, they don't need to make a splash, per se, in that department. I'm just saying a proven guard.
Well, Scherf is still there.
Who didn't live up to expectations of the contract, but certainly fits the profile of a proven commodity. I'd be willing, if the money's right, Sheriff to me is somebody I would consider and look at.
Yeah, I'd look at him. James Daniels went too. He got signed. He was a guy I was looking at. He ended up going for more than $10 million a year too. So, yeah, we'll see where them go. Tevin Jenkins is still out there.
Yeah, Jenkins was another name I brought up last week.
Another one of the 2021 class guys that we talked about last week.
Yep.
That's a guy I would think about. He has some tackle flex too if you want another guy that could be a little versatile. So yeah, I don't know. Again, we haven't seen contract structures. We don't know exactly how much money the Giants have left, depending on how they put these contracts together, how much they have to save for the quarterback position. So that's something to figure out. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm with Lance. I would say guard for me. How about you, Paul?
Yeah, I would concur, but I would also add, I would still be very, very, very interested to see if the Falcons are indeed going to keep Kirk Cousins. I would want to make a phone call, and I would want to find out.
Well, you don't have to make a phone call. We're going to know. He has a big roster bonus due in a couple days, I
don't know when it is. I know it's coming up.
Hold on, let me check that.
Yeah,
I mean, Bob Papa was just talking about this on Sirius NFL yesterday. He was saying, the Falcons keep saying
March 17th, he's due a $10 million roster bonus.
And it's interesting. It's interesting because I'd like to know if, in fact, he's an option. Because right now he's not. The Falcons are saying they're keeping him.
They want to try to make a team trade for him.
Yeah,
okay,
I don't blame them because they're waiting to see the market shrink to see if somebody still needs a veteran.
Now I always made this point. At some point, does it become worth it for a team? I don't know exactly. I'm just going to throw out a rate. Let's say he has due $40 million this year, right? And that's fully guaranteed. So the Falcons have to pay that no matter what. At some point, if you're a team that want him, is it worth it to say, look, pick up $35 million? That's $5 free million for you. We'll pick up $5 million on the contract. You pick up $35. and we'll give you a 7th round
To the
pick.
existing team that has him under contract, you talk about.
No, if you're a team calling, and again, I'm not saying the Giants, if you're a random team calling the Falcons, they have Kirk Cousins, they have to pay him $40 million this year no matter what, even if they cut him.
Sure.
So we'll say, look, we'll pick up $5 million of the contract for you. We'll throw you a 7th round pick for your trouble. Trade him to us instead of releasing him. Is that worth it for the Falcons to save $5 million to get a 7th round pick to make that trade rather than keeping him as their backup? That's what you kind of have to figure out. What makes it worth it to the Falcons if you're convinced they're not going to cut him? Maybe you're not. To make that sort of trade. I don't know what that sliding scale would be for the Falcons, but that's a conversation I'm sure teams have had. Maybe even with Atlanta, for all I know. And again, this is random teams. I'm not connecting them to the Giants.
Right.
To make that type of deal, or you could just wait them out. But once you get past that roster bonus day, that's over. If they pay that roster bonus, they ain't moving him. So you better figure something out before March 17th.
That's why, I think an exploratory phone call to say to them, hey, guys, look, we know what we've been reading in the papers, but is there room to talk about this at all? I would just like to know if there is truly availability.
Yeah, and look, but the Falcons are going to try to play hardball here, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, then you hang up the phone and move on.
Yeah, Paul, good stuff. Lance, this is fun. Thank you for being with us on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Again, tomorrow our show will be at 4 o'clock at the start of the league year. For Paul Dottino, I'm John Schmeelk. For Lance Medow, that's Big Blue Kickoff Live presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. Thank you, Pearson Butler. Excellent job. Get back to your editing. We'll see you next time.